Hello and welcome back to our channel. Glad to have you here. So today we need to have a heart-to-heart conversation, especially if you're a parent or you're a mentor or you're somebody raising or influencing a teenager today. I want to talk about three lies that we must unlearn. This generation must unlearn three lies. And if we don't step in as intentional parents, leaders, whatever you like to say about that, anyways, we will lose an entire generation to trends, to trauma, to confusion, maybe all of that mixed together, but disguising as confidence. We have a set of people in this generation who are traumatized, but that trauma is masking as confidence. Uh, who are confused, but that confusion is masking as confidence. And so, a few of these things would have to be unlearned. We have to unlearn it maybe for ourselves and help our young people unlearn it as well. But mostly, young people, we need to unlearn if they are going to make any real success out of their life. So, let's begin with what the issue is. You know that we are currently raising young people in a world that is louder, faster, and more distracted than the world has ever been. We have an abundance of information. Something I've always talked about is that the generation that we are raising lives in an abundance of information, which is both a blessing and a burden. Information is everywhere, but transformation and formation is what is missing and what is lacking. Teenagers today are not just being misguided or misled, they are also being mismodeled. It's at least 2 years now since started talking about the question of role models in the lives of your young person. Who is your child following? Who are your children and your teenagers? Who are they modeling their lives after? They are watching influencers and celebrities, even their peers, who define what it means to be successful, what it means to be powerful, what it means to be valuable. And I usually will ask this question: if you do not help your teenager, your child, define what success means to them, the world is going to help them define it. Some misguided individual on the internet is going to help them define success. And the result is that many of our teenagers are learning things that in reality they should be unlearning if they are going to live wisely and live well. For instance, it has become trendy that disrespect is the same as boldness. It's become trendy in this generation to be disrespectful. And the more disrespectful you can be, the more loquacious you can be, uh, then you're bold. It has become generally believed that if you go viral, then you must be valuable. And so virality is mistaken for value, when in reality that is not the truth. Your teenagers are being taught that the more visible you become, the more you can be seen, the more important you are. But being seen and being solid, being grounded, are two different things. Actually, the most important components of life are not visible. I understand in a business sense, the role of visibility, the role of popularity, the role of marketing, and all of that for business is pretty much understood. But life as a whole, life in itself does not always answer to visibility and virality. But that is the conversation that we need to help our young people unlearn. So let's try and break down in the next few minutes some of these major lies that the young generation must unlearn starting today. Number one is the lie that loud means right, or that loud means correct. We live in an age of noise where whoever shouts the loudest is the person that gets the mic. And you see this in many sectors of life, not just on the internet and with social media trends and all of that. You see it in our political sphere, where the loudest people get the mic, generally speaking. Whether they have content, whether they have an ideology, whether they have anything meaningful to say, as long as you can talk in a certain way in our political space, everybody listens to you. And then the people who have real value and content seem almost vilified for their lack of eloquence or lack of audibility, if I would say. It's also happening in church and in different religious circles. You see people who are teaching and preaching outright nonsense and rubbish, but they have volume. Their voice is loud. Their voices are loud. And they have the audience, they have the microphone, they have the followership. And that's what we celebrate, quite frankly. Because these guys did not just arrive on the scene all by themselves. They arrived there because somebody propped them up. And who? We, all of us did. And so many of our teenagers now believe that if I can say it with enough confidence, then it must be true. How false can that be? How false can that be? The truth really is that volume is not the same thing as virtue. Loud is not the same thing as right or correct. Some of the most foolish ideas, some of the most idiotic ideas are being shared today with the utmost confidence. What is that they say? That the empty barrels make the loudest noise. And because your child is growing up in an environment where this set of persons are going viral, they begin to think that this is the model for strength. So we need to unlearn that. We need to help our teenagers unlearn that. We need to help young people understand that most of the time, wisdom whispers. Truth does not act drama. Truth does not need theatrics. Humility sometimes, many times, humility is strength. Let us help our young people. Let us raise kids who don't need to dominate, who don't need to trample on other people for them to find their own value. Over the weekend, it was trending about one TikTok celebrity who invited a number of educated persons only to mock them. Let us raise young people who can sit in a room and bring peace in that room, not pressure. Who can understand that listening is a type of superpower. The fact that someone has an audience does not necessarily mean that they have authority and that they have authenticity. So that's the first truth, or first lie, rather, that your teenager needs to unlearn. Lie number 2: clout equals success. What a lie. Clout is not success. And this lie is even more dangerous. It's more dangerous um, on many levels. Clout, influence, likes, followers, shares, all of those social media, internet metrics is what this generation is being taught that defines their worth and defines success. Somewhere in the early part of this conversation, I said that we need to help young people redefine the true meaning of success, and everyone will need to define that for themselves. You know what amuses me is in the final analysis, it is actually only poor people who believe some of these lies. The rich, the truly rich, qualify. The truly rich actually educate their children differently. Worth that is measured by how many people is watching you is really not real worth. I'm saying that because I also mentioned that when the conversation is business, we can look at these things differently. Allow me to digress a little bit because if you were a business person and you needed to advertise your product to a certain market, most likely you're going to be looking at where the numbers are. But how do we contrast that with the fact that somebody who has the numbers actually has numbers without essence? So you can go on Instagram and get 1 million followers if you know how to show breasts and bum bum. You will blow. It's almost like a dumb thing, but it is. So we now have a culture that celebrates noise over depth. Our teenagers idolize people who become famous by mocking other people. They idolize people who make video skits without substance, who dance their way into virality. I talked about Bum Bum and Breast, and the content of music we have on that is more viral than solid entertainment and music. You can see what difference is. And it brings me to the question, who exactly is making these kinds of persons go viral? Again, every one of us is culprit. Every like, every share, every laugh, every jest, every comment you put on that content that is demeaning society makes you an accomplice. But this is something we must teach our young people, that visibility is not always virtue. Virality is not always virtue. Clout is not character. And clout is not success. Excuse me, the devil has clout. Don't you think so? True success is really not about being seen. It's about being sent on an assignment on purpose and with responsibility. So help your teenager unlearn this particular lie. Understand that influence without integrity is a risk. It is dangerous. And who you are in private matters more than reputation and public performance. Lie number three. Lie number three is the popular one, very, very popular lie. That education does not matter. That education is scam. School is scam. This one is particularly interesting to me because uh, this generation is being taught that school is scam, and unfortunately, a lot of young people are falling for this lie. School is outdated. That you can blow on TikTok. Actually, you can. But that you can skip the process, no, you can't. That reading, that studying, that learning, and developing your mind is actually something that is meant for unserious people who are not going anywhere. Again, I'm going to drag all of us as culprits inside this one because we are the ones who have collectively rewarded foolishness on the internet. We are the ones who have collectively rewarded the amount of foolishness that we have today. But the truth is, education is not optional. I read a particular commentary on that young man who made a mockery of some master's degree holders over the weekend. I read a particular commentary, and in that commentary, I'm trying to remember the name so that I can give credit to him. Maybe I'll put it in the comment section. He was talking about the fact that how did this young man forget that all of the tools and the gadgets he's using to go viral on TikTok was created by PhD holders, researchers, and people who have invested their lives and their time in producing the technology that you're using to go viral. That is the missing piece of information that we need to bring back to the consciousness and awareness of our young people. Because I keep asking, who are those who will build the technology of tomorrow from this part of the world? Or are we forever going to remain as consumers of whatever is on the internet? When everybody in a particular generation becomes content creators and skit makers, who are those that will build the bridges? Who are those that will design our roads? Who are the architects that will build our houses? But it brings me back to that comment I made earlier, that it is only the poor that believe these lies. So you need to train your children differently. You need to bring them up with a different consciousness that even though you might not need a degree to be financially successful, you're going to need a whole lot of discipline to do that. You need to train your mind. You need to develop your convictions as a young person. You need to develop an identity. You need to develop a worldview. You need to learn to reason. You need to learn to do research. You need to learn to do the work that the process that produces prosperity and success. Any generation that ignores education like the way we are seeing it today is going to become a tool in the hands of those who have learned to pay attention. So we must help our young people unlearn these lies. Teach them to value education, value learning, whether it is learning in school or learning in trade or mentorship, informal mentorship. I mean, serving successful people and trading your time for life lessons that you could never have learned any other way, even in a classroom. A child who can think critically, a child who can speak clearly, who can articulate their thoughts and act wisely will always rise above and beyond what his or her generation is speaking, no matter what the trend says. And so that is where the real work lies. I understand that we cannot simply criticize the culture of the day. What we have to do is to create alternatives. So we must give our children a different narrative. We must help them build a different kind of consciousness. But it begins with us. What are you celebrating as a parent? What are you liking? What are you sharing? What are you commenting on? And know exactly what is the content of that your comment. And then we can have the voice and authority to ask our teenagers to check what they are consuming. We must be bold enough to say that not every popular thing is profitable for us, and not every popular thing is profitable for the young people and the generation that we are raising. I believe strongly that we can raise a generation of teens who are balanced, who are bold, who also learn to gain visibility, but visibility for the right things, who are creative and who are anchored in truth, who have solid sense of identity. It will take a lot of intentionality, whether as a parent or as a coach or just as someone raising and influencing a young person. It will take a lot of intentionality. You watch every of your step and carefully take actions that reflect the value system that you want to model. A value system that is rooted in truth and not just in trends. So that's about how I close it on this particular conversation. I'll always remind you that this is the culture we're trying to build in Teen Success Academy. And that's what our programs and events are designed to achieve. So if you have not signed up your teenager for our Thrive Bootcamp, the 5.0 Thrive 5, it's not just another coaching experience or holiday program. It is a space where we help teenagers rediscover purpose, discover values, godly character, godly confidence rooted in truth while they are learning to navigate the digital experiences of this generation. And so you're welcome to subscribe, give us, send us a message or drop a comment in the comment section. Let's raise young people who thrive. Thank you for watching this episode and make sure you keep thriving. Until I see you in the next video.